have a choice.
the Republican
I
candidate
did
for
not
governor.
have sexual relations
And
with
I
that woman.
realized that this is something
Miss
he
Lewinsky.
is
We're not going to
inherent.
be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Hey, Cleveland. Welcome to Backfire again this morning. Wednesday morning. Storms are over. Get up. It's time to get with it. Good morning, Franklin.
Good morning.
Good morning, John.
Hey, Steve.
Well, we've had another exciting week of storms going around. I'm glad that's past us now, but I'll be really glad when we get out of tornado season. It's a scary season around here.
Yeah, I think we all will.
Obama really hadn't messed up much this week, so there isn't a whole lot to talk about.
That's not true at all.
Uh-oh, what happened?
First of all, John Kerry apparently now wants to refer to Israel as an apartheid state, which has all of Israel in arms. And the funniest thing about John Kerry, amazing. Here's the quote. He said, if there's no two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict soon, Israel risks becoming an apartheid state. Secretary of State John Kerry told a room of influential world leaders in a closed-door meeting Friday. Now, Israel naturally took great acceptance to being referred to in the terms of South Africa. The funny part about this, now that this is blown up, and actually Israel is very upset about it, this is John Kerry's claim. Now listen to this. This is his actual words. First, Israel is a vibrant democracy, and I do not believe, nor have I ever stated publicly or privately, that Israel is an apartheid state or that it intends to become one. And then just two sentences lower in his statement, he says, and if I could rewind the tape, I would have chosen a different word to describe my firm belief. So he says he didn't say apartheid state, and then says, if I could rewind, I wouldn't have used the word apartheid. He contradicts himself in his own denial that he didn't say it, even though he's on tape saying it. That's what the foreign policy of this administration has come to.
That's not accurate, John.
I just read you
I
his
know
words,
you read
Franklin.
it, and you misconstrued exactly what you read.
If I could rewind the tape, I would have chosen a different word. That's his words.
What he said, first of all, the original quote was that Israel risks becoming that, not that they are. Which is what he then said. He had never told them that they were that. He said they risk becoming that. In fact,
now, actually,
that's true.
Franklin, let me read you his quote so you understand.
I heard you read it.
Let me read it again because you must have missed the ending. Nor have I ever stated publicly or privately that Israel is an apartheid state or that it intends to become one.
And he didn't say they intended to become one.
Guys, this is your lawyerly explanation of a screw-up of monumental proportion.
I wish your party was capable
Franklin,
of a serious discussion, John.
A serious discussion?
Yeah.
You're going to tell me that this man who leads our entire foreign policy
John,
on behalf of the
wish
country,
you were capable
you're going to
of
hang
a
it on the
serious
fact that
discussion.
he said intends. It's all because he didn't say intend.
Here are the facts,
The
folks.
facts
Well,
are he insulted our greatest ally in the Mideast.
Here are the facts, and frankly, your party seems to be determined to see the destruction of Israel. I don't know any other conclusion you could reach.
This administration has done more to insult Israel in the history of the country, and you're going to try to say it's the Republicans'
Here are the
fault.
facts, and I challenge John to tell me which of these facts are wrong.
Go, Franklin.
In the occupied territories, that is the portion that's in dispute in this, there are population growth is rapidly ensuring that there are going to be more Palestinians in the area than there are going to be Jews who are citizens of Israel. Now, hold on.
All right.
Now, those folks there don't have the right to vote. And so what Secretary Kerry was saying is that very rapidly, Israel's going to have a choice. Either they're going to give those people the right to vote, in other words, be a democracy, which will guarantee that Israel will not be a Jewish state in the future, or they're going to deny them the right to vote and have a minority dominating a majority, which is the reference to potentially becoming an apartheid state.
In other words, John Kerry referred to them becoming an apartheid state, which is what he denied, which is what you denied.
John, you are
He
too
called
smart
them an apartheid
to screw
state.
around with the English
Franklin,
language the way you're doing
This
right
man's
now.
not smart enough to screw around with the English language, and that's the problem. He's a moron, and he can't keep his mouth shut, which
Once
in foreign
again,
policy,
John,
you know damn good and
once
well you
again-
have to be extremely careful with what you say.
Yes,
And he's too
and
stupid
you know what?
to do
And
that.
what he said was exactly
by
true.
calling them an apartheid state.
John, that's just a darn lie, and you know it.
Well, Franklin, it's
Shame
like
on
the
you.
lie on Benghazi, which we
Shame
now have
on you
direct.
again.
We
Yet
now
another
have
lie.
direct. Franklin, we have a direct email that had to be forced by court order to be unredacted that shows White House policy people, political people, directed Susan Rice to cover up the fact that it was a terrorist attack. I have the email in my hand. I'll be glad to read it to you, and the entire
John,
list of White House
John, if
officials
that's-
that got
if-
it.
First of all, I doubt that there's a shred of truth in what you're saying. But number two, if there were, that would mean that your elected senator is an outright liar.
No, it means
No,
that
it
the
would
White
mean
House
Bob
lied to
Corker,
him,
who's
Franklin.
gone on TV and said he's seen all the emails, he's seen all the cables, he's satisfied that we know what happened, and he's comfortable
We're not
with
talking
it.
about what happened. We're talking
No,
about the
we are
cover up. We're
talking
talking
about
about
it.
the cover up
We're
after
talking
what
about
happened.
this insane
Bob Corker,
obsession you
Franklin,
have.
Bob Corker was talking about what happened at the compound. This is about the cover up after the
person
fact.
who wrote the talking points has testified to Congress that he did it, and he was not put
Well,
no political
Franklin,
pressure put on
you-
it,
the-
and he was a Reagan appointee.
Franklin, your problem is a new email has surfaced, an email that the White House redacted when it was first requested, and only under court order did they unredact it. And when you unredact it, it is purely political email
The
directing
person
Susan
who
Rice.
wrote
Franklin,
the talking points
Franklin.
testified how he created them and who vetted them.
Hey, Franklin, I think it's in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal about all this right now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But, you know,
Fine.
Well, I mean, it's showing that
Fine.
they finally found something that proves that
it's a
they're-
smoking
they're-
gun. It shows that the White House political arm directed Susan Rice to make sure that they stressed it was because of a video, even though we have time-dated information showing they had already been told it was not the video.
Like
First
I said.
of all, what they did was tell her to follow the talking points that had been created, which had been
Franklin,
created by
right-
the CIA
no,
and
they
the
don't.
State
Let me
Department.
read it to you, because here's the email. I have it in front of me. This is the email. This is from Benjamin Rhodes, who is one of the communications advisor, deputy strategic communications advisor. And what the email says is the goals of Susan Rice's talk is there's four goals. The important ones are to underscore that these protests are rooted in an internet video and not a broader failure of policy, and to reinforce the president and administration's strength and steadiness in dealing with difficult challenges. That's a White House email going to Susan Rice the day before she went on the Sunday morning talk
Based
shows.
upon the talking
So you
points the State
understand.
Department and the CIA had created.
Franklin, here's who that email went out
That's
to.
what he's
It went
supposed
out
to
to
do.
Press Secretary J.J. Carney. It went out to Josh Earnest, then the White House Communications Director, Dan Pfeiffer, Deputy Communications
That's
Director,
what talking
National
points
Security
are,
Council
John.
Director of Communications. And it went
Call.
to, of course, David Plouffe, the political
He's
strategist.
called.
That's what talking points are,
He's called.
John.
Hey, wait a minute. Wait a
That's
minute.
the
Wait a minute.
purpose
Let
of
me
them.
let me add to this. Didn't Obama go out even after Susan Rice and continue to
Yes, he
No,
did.
he did
this?
not.
He most certainly did.
He did not.
And by the way, Franklin,
It's just a lie.
let me give you another
you
thing.
make this stuff up.
11
No, we
months
don't.
ago, Franklin, listen, 11 months ago, the White House claimed that they had released the whole archive on the development of these talking points and accused the GOP of doctoring them to the point that the White House, the Washington Post actually gave the White House 3 Pinocchios for that claim. But here's a new email. Now, 11 months ago, they said they had released all the emails. But here's an email directing her to brag on the president and to push the video. And yet, 11 months ago, they said they'd already released everything. Where'd this one come from, Franklin? Why didn't it get released 11 months ago? There's no national security in it, and yet it was redacted.
And the
Because
private
all
sector's
of the
doing
focus
fine.
was on how the talking points had been created.
This
not
is
what
about
happened.
it. This
no,
is
it isn't. That's after the fact,
No,
John.
Franklin, this is the Saturday before she went on the Sunday morning talk shows. This
That's
is
right. The talking points had already been created at that point.
Franklin, You know, folks, this is all it boils down to. You got a bunch of lawyers in the White House that don't care about the actual truth as long as they
Here's
can
what
hang
it
their
boils
hat
down
on a
to.
technicality.
The Republican Party is so filled with hatred that
Hatred?
they
Wait a minute.
cannot focus
Wait a minute.
on what the
Wait a minute.
facts
Let's
are.
talk about Republican hatred.
Let's do.
Okay. I don't know I didn't know the IRS was targeting conservative
Guess
groups.
what we found out this past week?
I didn't know that.
Guess what
I
we
never
found
said
out?
I never said if you
We
like
found
your
out this
plan
past
you can,
week that
you
in
can
fact
keep your plan.
more
I never said
progressive groups had been targeted than
Franklin,
conservative.
they weren't
Instead of redlining
targeted for the
Syria.
same reasons. They were targeted for my mistakes. The mistakes were corrected, and they got their tax-exempt
Listen, folks,
status.
more liberal and progressive
not
groups
true.
got
That
targeted
is
than
not true.
conservative
The
ones.
private
Franklin, that's not
sector
true.
is
You
Once
know
doing
it.
again,
fine.
the myth crashes
Franklin, that's
down.
not true, and
If
you know
like
it.
your plan,
It is
you
true.
can keep
That's
it.
what we
No,
found out
there were
this week.
more progressive groups that they pulled out and said, "Oh, look, we held this up for a week while we got a clarification." The conservative groups were targeted for their ideology. They were even asked what church their members
another
attended.
myth comes crashing down by the
Franklin,
weight of its own falsehood.
Here's
All right, hold
here's
on.
the hard long-term thing for me, Franklin. You, in the future, will be ashamed that you defended the most corrupt,
President
illegal
ever.
administration in the history of this country.
Can't believe you're still doing it. Anyway, two of my favorite sayings he said is, "You didn't build that."
That's
and
right.
Obamacare won't add one dime to the deficit. Okay.
That's right.
Well, it's adding more than one. Well, that's true, Franklin. That's the lawyerly answer. It didn't add one dime. It added millions of dimes.
I
to
never
the deficit.
said if you like your plan, you can keep your plan.
Of course he didn't say that. What's wrong with you? And if you bring up videotape showing him saying it, you're a racist.
Once again, math has failed you now with words.
Obamacare is ballooning the deficit
Once
by every
again,
estimate.
Every estimate has shown that it would have cost more to do nothing.
Franklin, that's
Every one of them.
everything you all do is it would have been worse if we hadn't. Oh, and by the way,
That's
folks,
right. That's what he said.
In the administration's terms, the way this could actually save you money is you'll be put on a waiting list, a secret waiting list like the veterans were out in Arizona, and you'll die so they won't have to spend any money on
Talk
you.
In
about the
other
veterans.
words-
let's talk about the veterans. What about the
A
veterans?
secret waiting list that
secret waiting
veterans
list.
died waiting to get treatment because they decided who was more important to serve.
They were cooking the books.
At a veterans hospital.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
That's government health care for you.
Why do we even have a veterans hospital? Why can't it be part of a regular hospital system? I've never figured that out.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. I know why they were created. If you'll recall, when all the veterans hospitals were created, we didn't have a very strong public hospital system. It was a way to ensure that veterans got health care that they wouldn't have gotten
frankly,
otherwise.
That's an excellent point because here's the Republicans' point on this. We talk about it on a local level when we talk about zero-based budgeting. Maybe it makes a little sense to every now and then go through the government and go, gosh, we don't need a strategic helium reserve anymore since World War I is over. We should get rid of that government program. But liberals always have a constituency that they have to continue to buy those votes with.
Well, first of all, there is no mechanism in place to provide those health care services apart from those veterans facilities right now. Now, maybe there should be.
I mean,
and that's a fair. I
I
don't disagree with the point.
I understand
you're making,
what you're saying,
okay?
and I appreciate it, but all it is another code.
Why doesn't the VA just pay for the veterans' services at regular hospitals?
Well, why doesn't the Republican Party come out and propose that?
Because
then?
you all will show Paul Ryan throwing a veteran off a cliff.
No, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
I'm
I just
serious.
said what.
Your
Steve raises a very serious
You're right,
point
but your
here,
people.
okay?
Paul Ryan
But
raised
give
good
me
points.
a serious response.
Paul
to it.
Ryan raised good points about the instability of Medicare and Medicaid, and your people produced a video showing him rolling an elderly woman in a wheelchair over a cliff. That was the liberal response.
Because what he wanted to do.
No, he
was
wanted to
get
talk.
rid of it.
Franklin, no, actually, he didn't propose getting rid of it at all. He proposed people voluntarily be able, future people voluntarily.
which effectively killed
No,
it.
Okay,
Frank, well,
okay.
it's going to die on its own.
Let's be constructive here.
No,
Let's not-
you know,
It's dying,
as I
Franklin.
said, Steve raises a valid point.
That's right.
Okay?
Let's talk about that for a
All right,
minute.
and there could be serious ways of addressing that, but this,
It's
you
just
know,
a code. It's
but-
basically a
but
code.
But what I'm saying is you've got to have, if what you'd have to do is you'd have to provide some sort of insurance benefit to veterans that allow them to access this service.
What do you think there would be, right off the bat, Franklin, would there be one idea that everybody would agree with, or would we need to bring lots of ideas to the table and discuss
that's fine.
So the 39 jobs bills that the Republicans have passed in the House should be voted on in the Senate by Harry Reid, correct? Because that's 39
like
different
the jobs
issues
bills
to put people
that
back
were
to work.
provided by the Senate. You know,
The Senate won't, by the way, bills originate in the House, Franklin, and the Senate won't discuss the 39 jobs bills the Republican Congress has passed because it's partisan politics.
okay, if you say so.
All right, getting back to the VA hospitals. Basically, I think it's just a card, a code, something that a veteran, instead of going through Chattanooga, driving to Murfreesboro to get to a hospital, could stop down here at Erlanger Hospital.
Okay.
At a hospital that's starving for money.
Here's your problem with that. There's an entire federal bureaucracy involved in the VA hospital system now.
Sure.
And so once a government program gets started, you never get rid of it.
Do you think we could get the Democrats and the Republicans together on that one to make the VA system a better system by putting it into the regular
It's
hospital
at least
system?
conceivable. You know, I see what the objections will be. Right now, a veteran goes to one of these facilities and they pay nothing. Okay. Well, if you go to these other facilities, then you get into these disputes about how much the government's reimbursing them.
Well,
and
Franklin,
and I'm just saying
the
that's
guys
that's
that
where the
died
debate will
on the
be.
waiting list in Arizona were paying nothing, so they paid nothing to
John, I'm
die
not
on the
defending
waiting
that.
list.
I'm not defending that hospital out there. That's terrible, and those people should be prosecuted for it.
Well, if they're like Lois Lerner, they won't be. They'll move to their $2.4 million mansion on the river.
Well, you know, the lady that was in charge of this, hadn't she disappeared? She's on paid leave right now.
Of
isn't
course,
she?
we wouldn't want to unpaid leave for her. She's a
what are we
government
talking
employee.
The lady in charge of this
That
VA
was keeping
system
the list.
that was cooking the books and
Okay.
kept it hid.
But there's a criminal investigation underway.
There's been a criminal investigation into the IRS. There's been a criminal investigation into Benghazi. Nothing. We haven't heard anything. Matter of fact, the Associated Press could find the terrorists that killed our ambassador in Benghazi, but apparently the FBI can't.
All right, changing the subject. Have you heard anything about the Pentagon to destroy $1 billion in ammunition?
I saw the story. I didn't read it.
Well, I just kind of glanced at a story about this, and it was pretty amazing to me. The Pentagon plans to destroy more than $1 billion worth of ammunition, although some of the bullets and the missiles could still be used by troops, according to the Pentagon. It is impossible to know what portion of the arsenal slated for destruction, valued at $1.2 billion by the Pentagon, remains viable because the Defense Department inventory systems can't share data effectively, according to a government accountability.
So I take it that means that some of the ammunition is obsolete.
We don't
Is that
know.
what it means?
Well, let me keep going here just a minute. I think you'll understand this. Other key findings from the report: the services have inventory systems for ammunition that cannot share data directly, despite for decades to develop a single database. Only the Army uses the standard Pentagon format. Excuse me. The Air Force, the Navy, and the Marine Corps operate from formats that are obsolete. The services hold an annual conference to share information about surplus ammunition and swap bullets and other munitions as needed. Data about ammunition left over after the meeting disappears from the books, resulting in an unknown amount of good bullets headed to the scrap heap.
Yeah, it's a very inefficient system how we essentially operate.
This is
multiple different branches.
2014.
I agree with you.
How long would it take someone to develop a computer formula to inventory the bullets,
Well, let me-
the ammunition
let
systems
me
in
put a
America?
different little-
This is no, wait a minute. Let me finish. This is absolutely crazy to be sitting there saying in 2014 that we have a system that won't respond with each other, that they can't keep inventory, and that they hold an annual conference once a year to talk about this crap.
Yeah.
That's an excuse to get together, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, let me throw a little different light on that. I grew up hunting. I've got a new deer rifle I've had for 15 years, but I grew up hunting with an 1898 Springfield 3040 Craig. why don't they sell the ammunition? I guarantee you there are people out there that have the guns, that fire that ammunition, that would be glad to buy the surplus ammunition. Why would the government destroy a perfectly usable and valuable asset? Because it's not real money. I'll give you a perfect example. We went to a seminar about what they're trying to do in Charleston for the Trail of Tears. Wonderful people working hard up there. But they had the government come in, the federal government came in, and they were talking about all the great ideas that the federal government had, and they were much more creative. And my comment was, it's very easy to be creative when it doesn't cost you anything, where you're not actually worried about the cost. Do you know what they wanted for the walkways up there? They said, we want varnished dirt walkways. I didn't know you could varnish dirt, but apparently the federal government can varnish dirt. Put concrete down, put dirt on top of the concrete, and then varnish the dirt.
Looks like it'd be slippery.
Well, that's my point. The government doesn't care what anything costs because they just send an IRS agent out and collect more taxes.
But the ammunition deal, that's just...
Sell it.
I mean...
Put it on the internet and sell it.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's some of the missiles they can't sell, but the bullets they sure could. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Well,
Yeah, I was just looking this up because I hadn't heard about this. It says that our armed services manage a munitions inventory worth $70 billion. That's how big it is. So, yeah, sure.
Well, there's lots of arguments.
Sure.
It's down that same line, all the argument we're seeing now over the Bureau of Land Management. Why do they have all this land? People get confused because the national parks are not the same thing as what the Bureau of Land Management does. They lease this land out for private use. Why? Where in the Constitution does it say the government should own land and lease out to private use? They actually lose money on the deal. They spend more money maintaining the land than they bring in the leases. Sell the land. Why does the government own it? Sell it.
Because the nation as a whole has an interest in
No, Franklin.
maintaining certain portions of the
separate.
land
Those
undeveloped.
You're right. If you'd listen to what I said, those are separate bodies.
Well,
of
they don't
land.
all have to be
The
national parks, but it's still
then declare
undeveloped
them a national
land.
park or get rid of them. If it's not a national park, get rid of them. Most of this land is sold for commercial, rented for commercial use, Franklin. The government effectively is competing with private real estate people. Where in the Constitution does it say that the government should be in competition with private industry?
I don't know about the private industry part. We're talking about basically rangeland, most of it.
Actually, most of the I will bring the report in next week for you, Franklin. The government leasing amounts for private grazing is below the industry average for private land leasing. So in other words, they're leasing it below market prices, losing money on the deal, and then our taxpayers are having to make up that lost money. Sell the land.
Why are we paying tobacco subsidies to keep people from growing tobacco? Why do we pay a farmer not to grow tobacco?
Why do we pay a farmer not to grow anything?
That's
They
right.
pay them not to grow corn.
Okay. Why do we do that?
Well, the best kind of business you can go into is the not growing corn business. Or really, but not growing hog business is better because when you're not growing, let's say you're not growing 100 head of hog, those hogs will not eat, I don't know, let's say 1,000 bushels of corn. So then you also get paid for not growing the 1,000 bushels of corn that you're not feeding the hogs you're not growing.
What is the purpose of that?
Supposed to be to provide protection for American farmers from
Most
foreign
farmers
competition.
don't want it anymore.
Who doesn't want
No,
it?
farmers don't want that anymore.
From foreign competition. So
Yeah, tremendous amounts of our produce and so forth is imported from other countries.
The real answer is it's a government bureaucracy, and government grows, and government
Well,
never
if-
cedes
if-
any power.
if America had a surplus of corn, what do you think would happen? I mean, there's amazing
Sure.
the things that are made by corn these days.
Well,
I mean, a
Well,
lot of
gasoline wouldn't be made by corn if there wasn't a 50-cent per gallon subsidy that the taxpayers pay. So when you get this ethanol fuel, folks, and you think it's cheaper, just make sure you count in your tax dollars going to subsidize it.
And be sure to figure an engine job in a few years because
Because it eats your engine
it's
up.
going to eat your engine.
And it's actually worse for the environment.
Yeah.
But now we have an ethanol subsidy program in place that we can't get rid of. You know, folks, I wasn't joking about the helium. We established the National Helium Reserve during World War I. It took until I think 2004 to get rid of it. And folks, in 2004, it was almost $1 billion a year of your taxpayer dollars for a strategic helium reserve, even though we had no strategic need for helium since we got rid of dirigibles.
I've got to say something real quick. We're going to take a break after I say this and come back. I've got some special surprises for you when we come back. But Hillary Clinton's on the move again. You know, she's out trying to.
She's found her faith.
Yeah, getting ready to go to
and found her remorse for Benghazi amazingly.
But she showed up at a conference of the United Methodist Women and gave a talk about the miracle of the loaves and fishes. And it was, you know, she was really never been involved, I don't think, in the church. I don't know. I mean, I've heard this, but a lot. But she was trying to give the story of Jesus instructing his disciples to feed 5,000 people with just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And she made the case on moral grounds of increasing the minimum wage and equalizing pay for men and women. It's amazing how the politicians can bring in the scriptures and try to tie it into something.
Well, last time I heard, Jesus was talking
political
to us as individuals and not asking us to ask the government to force us to do something.
That's right. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
You need money overnight? Check into cash. Your time is tight. .com. Bank accounts too low? Check into cash. So where do you go? .com. Do it online in record time. It's the easy way to get money next day. Do a quick click from home at checkintocash.com. Just stay